All right, we're at the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival. I'm here with
Doris Yeung.
And your film is Taxi Stories.
Yes.
So tell me, what is Taxi Stories?
Taxi Stories is a mosaic film that takes place in 3 different countries. There's 3 different stories that take place in 3 different Asian countries, in Jakarta, Hong Kong, and Beijing. They're fictional stories that take place somewhat in and about taxis and about the growing social divide between the have and the have-nots in Asia. As Asia is getting more and more wealthy, the social class divide is getting greater and greater apart.
So are these 3 separate stories? They're not told. Are they told one after the other, or are they
they're all interwoven with each other,
Okay.
and they're not connected per se by story, but by theme.
Okay, so you're highlighting the I guess the economic divide,
Which affects the personal lives of the people.
Okay, how can you talk a little bit about that? When you say that, what do you mean?
Well, in one of the stories in Beijing, it's about a taxi driver from the provinces, because most taxi drivers in China are not from the cities, they're from the provinces, from poor villages, and they come to the city to earn money as a taxi driver, which is a lowly job, so only kind of cheap labor from outside come and do it. But the problem is that they don't really know their way around the city, so when you get in a taxi, sometimes they don't know what you're talking about, which doesn't help. But they're usually like provincial people, kind of country bumpkin people, and then Shanghai, Beijing, quite sophisticated city folk, and the story is about this. They call it fu or die, which means second generation rich of China. These young people, 20s, who are like the sons and daughters of communist officials or oligarchs, and they kind of. You can't touch them, like they can do anything and then still get away with it.
Right.
That's a little bit the new economy of China. And actually this story came from a Facebook post from a friend of mine, and he actually encountered the same kind of thing. He was outside a gay club in Shanghai. He got picked up by this taxi driver, a provincial taxi driver, who then sexually propositioned him and in exchange for not having to pay the fare. And my friend is like very wealthy, and he's like kind of this upper class, kind of one of these fu or die, these second generation rich. So having this provincial poor taxi driver proposition him for sex was like incredulous to him, But when he wrote that, I thought, well, what if it did happen? What if there was a connection? You're really rich and he's not rich, so why could not that happen? And I also think that taxis are really one of the greatest equalizers of people, because it's only in a taxi where you can chat with someone like an Uber driver or a taxi driver, and you can talk really personal stuff. You've never met this person, but you tell them all kinds of stuff, and they tell you all kinds of stuff. And
then you'll never see
them again. But you would never talk to this person like on the street or in a restaurant or something, because different social class or whatever it is. So I just think there's such intimacy in a taxi, and then so many, and you create this intimate moment and a connection with someone else. So despite the obstacles, which are whatever they are. Yeah.
So in terms of, so what were some of the impetuses in terms of why you made the film? Did you write and direct? Or?
I wrote and directed it. Yeah.
Okay. So what were you talk a little bit about the divide between classes? Did it kind of start from there?
It started from that story, and then because I grew up in Hong Kong in the 80s, and then I immigrated to the U.S., and then I went back to China in Beijing to study in the late 90s. It was like it was already on its way developing, but not quite yet, so there's still a lot of, we only had cabbage to eat in the winter, and it's very, very different than when I went back about 5 years ago to work there for like 2 years. And China changed so much from when I was a student, and for me, that change is happening all over Asia. And I went also in Hong Kong, where I grew up. Like Hong Kong now is so different. I don't recognize it from when I was a kid. So I really wanted to show this divide. I chose those 3 cities for specific reasons. Hong Kong, because it's a long time developed economy, so-called, first world country, like Tokyo, like Japan, Korea.
I've seen
Hong
pictures,
Kong.
and it feels like Vegas to me in a way.
Yeah, it's very materialistic, and also China is this formerly communist country, or Beijing, capital of of communism, but it's not really communism anymore. You know, the divide between the rich and the poor is getting, you know, greater and greater, which is not what communism is about.
Right, and
so
the way you describe it is kind of there's the class system
difference.
now, and now you have kids who have the luxury of the class, but without any of the struggle for it, or the awareness outside of it.
That's why they call them second generation rich. Usually they're like good for nothing and, you know, fuck up and whatever, or, you know. So.
And then Jakarta.
And in Jakarta, well, I wanted to show a Southeast Asian one of these Southeast Asian economies that's like the tiger economy that's growing, because a lot of factory workers coming out of China because it's too expensive to hire Chinese workers, so they're all going to Southeast Asia, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Indonesia, moving factories over there, and they're developing their economy. But that's also driving this divide between, like, now all these people, factory owners and whatnot, are getting really, really rich, but on the backs of these, and they're getting actually worse and worse, their standard of living.
Okay, and so now you as a filmmaker, where are you in your career? Is this your first film, or is this?
This is my second feature film, and I went to film school here many years ago, and I did many shorts. And then I moved to Holland, where I actually started Cinemasia, which is the Asian film festival of the Netherlands. And actually, because of this festival, because of LA Asian Film Festival, which was called VC before, and one of my mentors was Linda Mabelat, who was one of the former executive directors who unfortunately passed away a while ago. And as a student at UCLA, she really mentored me and instilled in me kind of this fire to represent people of color, disenfranchised people on the screen, in the media, because she said, if we don't do it, no one else is going to do it for us. So I really took her words and what she taught me to Europe. And then, you know, and I saw the same thing in Europe as, like, in America, even worse, 30 years ago in the U.S., where you saw no Asian people in the screen, the media and television, and it's like now, in the 2000 something, and I was like, wow, okay, they really need something like VC was, but in Europe, because there's tons of Asian people in Europe, but you never know because you never see them anywhere or on the screen or whatever. So we decided to start this festival in the same lines of VC, to be a platform for to represent Asians in media. Now,
this film, Taxi Stories, was it filmed as similar to an independent film, or did you have a little more?
This is definitely
an
independent film. I mean, it was a low budget independent film, but we got very lucky with our casting because our producer knew this very, very famous Chinese actress, Feng Bobo, Patrina Feng, who's one of the most well-known Chinese language actresses. If you ask any Chinese person, they will know who she is. And she was in retirement, but she just come out because she was bored, or I don't know, she wanted to do something fun. So he actually sent her the script, and then she really liked it, and she really wants to bring up the next generation of young filmmakers. So she does all these kind of weird independent films now, and like first-time directors, and because she wants to help out the young generation. So she agreed to be in the movie, and then we also got lucky with another well-known actress from Indonesia. Her name is Shanti. She's actually in another film in this festival called Three Sassy Sisters. She's one of the most well-known actresses, singers in Indonesia. She's like the Madonna of Asia. Like everyone knows her as well. And I happen to know her actually from my film festival work. And I was looking for Indonesian actresses in Hong Kong. There's not that many Indonesian actresses in Hong Kong. And as this friend of mine, Indonesian actress, I said, would you like to do the film? And she's like, I'm sorry, I can't, I'm pregnant at the moment, but why don't you try Shanti? Because she's living in Hong Kong now because her husband is a banker and moved there. And I said, I know Shanti. So I called her, and then she looked at the script and she really liked it and decided to be on the project.
You know, we have festivals like this. What is the system like in Asia regarding like up and coming filmmakers, independent filmmakers? How much of your vision for storytelling supported?
Well, I think I'm really a mix of many different cultures. I grew up in Asia, but I was educated in the U.S. and then moved to Europe, and I have been there for over 15 years. So I think I see things from a kind of a pan-Asian, European, American perspective. And I think that gives me actually a kind of a unique viewpoint, apart from. So that's why my film is also a little bit like that as well. It's not like only Chinese or only Indonesian or only Asian American or something like this.
It's cross-cultural, yeah.
Cross-cultural, because I consider myself Asian American. If you ask me what I am, then I say I'm Chinese American, and a lot of my formative years, like what I learned and what I believe in, was formed when I was studying here. And I think I still have that in me, but because I'm living in different places, I also have part of those other places.
Yeah, you have a broad experience and
different
and exposure
from
to
my own personal kind of life. So I see it from that kind of prism or that kind of viewpoint. So for example, how I see things is so different than my family in Hong Kong. They see things totally different than me, and some other friends also see things totally different. Who, for example, friends who I went to school with here in LA, and they stayed in LA, whereas I have been living outside the US for I think more than 18 years, and they. When I come back, it's like VC or LA Asian Film Festival is like a homecoming. Like when I saw the opening film yesterday, Better Like Tomorrow, brought me back to that was like my era. And like even like those raving pants, like I was a raver as well. And I was like, but it's really interesting. You come back, it was like this time and place in your life, and a lot of memories, a lot of nostalgia, and also even the same people are still here. Abe, who I've known when I was a student with Linda, he was also a big champion when I was a film student of my short films, and he would show them when no one else would show them.
Oh, wow. Okay, so let's get back to Taxi Stories.
Yeah.
What is the message? What is the thing that you want audiences to walk away with?
I think that the message is that despite what we may look like, what social class we are, wealthy or not wealthy, whatever, there's so many barriers to people connecting, and more now in this really divided world, And I think the message I want to get across is that we need to reach out over this divide, over these obstacles, to connect with each other, because that's the only way we can continue.
Yeah, I mean, barriers are a big issue today.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, and where are you screening? And then outside of the festival, how can we get a look at?
In this festival, we're screening next Wednesday, the 3rd of May at 8:30 at the Geffen Contemporary at Mocha. And after LA, we're going to screen in Shanghai in June, Vancouver and Jakarta and Hong Kong in the fall.
Mm-hmm. And then let's see, is there a website or?
You can easily see where the screenings are going to be on our Facebook site, which is facebook.com/Taxi Stories Movie.
Okay, Taxi Stories. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.